Hey everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey everybody, Cantonese Cat here. I was requested to do a video on RIOT and maybe a couple other miners. I'm just going to go from real quick monthly chart here being shown. You can see this big giant volume shelf right around 11.6 or so. The bottom of this volume shelf is around 10.1, I suppose. Really, this whole volume shelf is where we've been finding support at, and there's a volume shelf right above of it, and this is going to be around 19.5, and price has really been just bouncing off of both of these volume shelves for a very, very long time. For months number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It just feels like RIOT really hasn't been doing anything, even though the buying volume actually has been increasing. You do have a little bit of a selling volume here a couple of months ago, but overall buying volume seems to be pretty decent. So I wonder if there's something that's being set up here that I just don't know about. But once price breaks out about this volume shelf, I think if you want to look at some of the higher levels that's going to go to, if you just want to do a Fibonacci level here real quick from the cycle top to the bottom, got rejected at 0.236. And it's finding some support over here, getting a little bit rejected from the 0.136 here too. But once you're able to get through all those volume shelves here, again, price has been here for like closer to a year now. Once you're able to break above this volume shelf, once you're able to break above this 0.336, I think you can get to some of the 30s and 40s levels up here, pretty reasonable. And I do expect there to be more resistance once we get up here. But I think that's going to be the next step, and I think it could happen relatively soon after the halving, where the price bullishness can be more sensitive to Bitcoin's bullishness, as well as the IWM small cap Russell, if it's able to really truly hit some of the levels, especially if it gets back to all-time high. I think there's a good chance where RIOT could potentially battle some of the higher levels up here in the 30s and 40s and even get higher if IWM, the Russell 2000, if that's able to behave with the small caps. We'll see what happens, but that's just kind of give you an idea in terms of some of the higher levels up here, the Fibonacci levels. The other way to look at some of the higher levels up here would be to look at the Ichimoku cloud. We already had the bullish cross here. After you've gone sideways for about closer to a year, you finally get a bullish cross last month. Price is still underneath both the Tenkan and Kijun though. So ideally, we'd like to flip the Tenkan reliably back as support, because right now, over here has been support, but it became resistance, and it still continued to become resistance. But we're able to flip this Tenkan line over here as support, then you're really talking about, again, going up to the 30s and potentially even like to the 40 up here on the top of the Ichimoku cloud. In order to do that, it does have to fight a lot of these volume shelves over here. It does have to fight the Tenkan right now as resistance, but it's been pushing up and trying to use flip that resistance support for about months number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 now. So I think that eventually it's going to push back up, and you probably end up back testing the support over the next couple of months, and then most likely up to 30s and 40s would go. In terms of the Bollinger Band, you can also see that the 20-month moving average is pointing up. There is not much of an expansion here. If anything, the Bollinger Band is kind of contracting a little bit, but price has just kind of been hugging the 20-month moving average, but it's still on the upper part of the Bollinger Band. So I still think that this is still relatively bullish price action, even though it's not as impulsive as some of the other ones. I still think that overall the trend is quite bullish. If you look at the weekly, if I turn off the Bollinger Band, it's not quite like Mara, it's not quite like Clean Spark, it's not quite like Bitfarms, where it's just been making higher lows and higher highs. What the price is doing so far has really been just kind of hugging the bull market support band. It sometimes gets below it, sometimes gets above it, sometimes gets below it, sometimes gets above it. It's not really finding a direction. It hasn't really been finding a direction for closer to a year now. And this is a pretty powerful move that's being built up here, because price should either go one way or another, and we kind of consolidate like this for a very long time. There could be a more powerful move that could come later on. It's who knows what's going to happen. But I do think that based on the monthly, based on the fact that the 20-month moving average is pointing up, I do think that most likely the next move is going to be up, just like it is up here. Like this reminds me This right here reminds me of what was happening right around here in really the first, actually like close to the second half of the 2020, around Q3 or so. That's what it kind of reminds me. And you can see that it's being upsloping right now. Once things tick off, it can get pretty impulsive. And the November candle right here coincides with the IWM really going high as well. So this is actually pretty decent setup for a potential move up. We'll see what happens though. But that's Riot. I also want to talk about HUT just to make it like a two-parter kind of thing. Now, I did sell out of HUT. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's no chance for HUT to do well. I still think that there's a potential for it to do well, but just because of a couple of things that I was seeing that I just didn't like. First of all, the 20-month moving average started crawling down a little bit, so you could potentially be talking about maybe another couple months before it could potentially break back above this volume shelf right here. And it can take some time, and it does need some time for it to reverse some of the damage that has been done over here. Now, the other thing about HUT is if you look at the Ichimoku cloud, it's still pretty far up, you know, and I can see potentially once it's able to break through all this volume shelves over here, once you get the Tenkan to cross back above the Kijun, once price gets back above the Tenkan and Kijun, and once price also breaks through about all of these volume shelves, even as high as up to 20 here, you have a lot of resistance here. It's going to take a long time to kind of break out. It can take months and months, right? I mean, granted, once it happens, it can happen quite fast, just like how it did over here on the last cycle. And there is a very similar look over here in this cycle compared to the last cycle. So there is a potential that within months, it can break through all of this and end up testing the Ichimoku cloud above, and maybe even potentially break above, who knows. But I just see that there's just too many resistance here, and the 20-month moving average also really wasn't doing what I would like it to do. Initially, I thought there was a little bit of up curling, but next thing you know, it just didn't really quite get there. Initially, I thought this is going to be a little bit of like a tweezer bottom here with just 1 and 2 wicks. Now you have a third test over here. I just didn't want to wait anymore, so I decided to sell based on technicals. And also fundamental also wasn't particularly convincing me either, so I ended up selling out of it. You look at the weekly moving averages, that also isn't entirely favorable as well. That's also another reason why I wanted to sell out of it. The 20-week moving average is crawling down. The 50 did cross, had a bullish cross with 100, but like I just don't see, like, if anything, they're kind of getting further apart, so I don't see the 50 crossing with the 20 to have a bullish cross anytime soon, at least not for the next couple of months or so. So I'm just going to sell. I saw it. I'm just going to stay away, and I would keep watching this from afar and see what happens. And if the narratives end up changing, if the fundamentals end up improving, this could be a late cycle boomer, because even the cycle before, you have Mara, you have Riot, and even Bitfarms was kind of advancing a little bit faster. But with HUT, it didn't really start breaking out until you're really talking about like December. All the other ones really had a big giant breakout candle around November. So actually December, it didn't even break out. It didn't break out until really January. So this could be a late bloomer, and it's going to take a lot of damage off this technical here, kind of like how it took a long time to repair some of the technicals over here. I can see this continue going on for months and months and months, so just be careful if you're going to be in something like this. There is a potential opportunity cost that you might be missing here. Another one that I like a lot in terms of technicals here, I just want to share a third one and make it a triple header. CIFR and CIFR. Look at the Monday chart. The monthly chart, if you do the Ichimoku cloud, it already had a bullish cross, and right now price is actually bouncing between the Kijun and the Tenkan, and there's a good chance that price could get above Tenkan over the next couple of months or so. And once it does that, it could get above this volume shelf right here, which has been serving as resistance for quite some time. We're talking about months number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're talking about a whole year price just kind of stuck between these this huge volume shelf right here. If it's able to break above this, is it able to break above 10 and then maybe even potentially back test it as support, things can get pretty bullish pretty quickly for this one, simply because it did have a bullish cross here. Now, if you also look at the Bollinger Band is not really expanding. It's kind of just like curled back together. It's kind of like Riot, but it's also like Riot. You also see a little bit of uptrending 20-month moving average. Actually, if anything, is a little bit accelerating up to the upside. And price is also hugging this volume shelf over here, potentially bouncing above, potentially testing some of the levels up here over the next coming months. But this is a decent look. There are quite a few things that are going for it. If you look at the weekly moving averages, and again, unlike Mara, unlike CleanSpark, unlike Bitfarms, it doesn't really quite have that like higher highs and higher low kind of thing. It's just been kind of oscillating between the bull market support band for really close to almost a year. I would say like 9 months or so. But if you look at the weekly moving averages, so you have the 50, which is blue, you have the 100, which is black, the 20, which is in a part of the bull market support band. 20 is still about 50, 50 is above 100. You still have a bull trend going here. Now, granted, it does seem like maybe is at risk for a little bit of a bearish cross here, but I like how price is kind of squeezing between 20 and 50, meaning there's a bunch of energy that's being built up, and once the energy is that's being built, is being released, the fact that it has a bull trend most likely is going to end up falling through and becoming more bullish. The buying volume also is quite good. I mean, it did have some selling volume over here in early January. But overall, you have pretty decent buying volumes here. I like the fact that you have increasing buying volume here, and they also have these increasing buying volume here, whereas the selling volume is actually not that great. So the conviction from sellers is actually not very strong. Together with the bull trend, I think there's potential here based on the technicals, and I like it. I don't have a position because I already have so many different ones, but this is one that I have been keeping an eye on. And this is one when it breaks up, most likely because of the bull trend, probability is probably going to be breaking up to the upside. So I like this one. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. These are the three that I'll talk about in addition to the three that I talked about earlier. Have a good one. Bye.